to the Huffing Spirit Podcast, where we take you from the sacred to the profane, from the serious to the silly, from the outer to the inner, and from the guru back to you. Join your playful podcast guides, Alex Hindley and Natalie Dick, as they bring you back to a grounded and more authentic approach to spirituality.
We are live.
Live. Huffing Spirit Podcast with a guest. Today we've got Claire Bigley. She is a gifted musician and sound healer who helps people connect and activate and expand into their authentic selves. Her music is intentionally made to soothe the nervous system and balance the energy that is vital to the self and connection and healing. She is truly one of the sweetest people I've ever met, and she has a tremendous ability to meet people where they are and hold space for them in their process. And I aspire to be as caring and thoughtful as she is. Claire Bigley.
Welcome, Claire. We're so happy to have you on the podcast. And I was listening to some of your music right before we jumped on. I was eating lunch and listening to, I think it was the Shadow one on Spotify. I don't know. I'm really drawn to shadow work, but your music is incredible. So we're going to open this up and let you kind of describe who's Claire? Who's Claire Bigley?
Well, first off, thank you for having me here. It is an honor. I've been listening to you guys as well. I've so enjoyed the podcast.
Thank you.
And I love how you continue to bring it back to, you know, how does it permeate in the listener's body? What feels authentic and earthy and grounded to them. I so love that. So thank you for doing this.
Oh,
thank you.
it's been,
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, we're just honored to have you on the podcast. So yeah.
Yay. So me, Well, let's see. I've always been immersed in music. I grew up wanting to play the piano. So my parents obliged me, got me lessons. And so I grew up training to be a musician, training classically, reading the notes, lots of practicing, that kind of thing. And that played out in my life for a long time. And then, like all of us, I hit some blow-ups in life, right? Where you're like, oh, okay, regroup, reboot, right?
Yeah.
And one of those reboots, I started working with a person you guys have talked about and people have heard if they've listened to this podcast, Kurt Hill.
Yeah.
You only get to name him 3 times.
Yeah. And then we have to shut the podcast down. Just kidding.
And so at that point, I was already kind of dabbling in self-help, soul work, trying to figure out what was working in my life, trying to figure out what I could let go of. And he, of course, then blew the top off of it, right? And so it's a hugely long story, but I'll kind of pepper it, and then we can take whatever tendrils we want to. I realized that I wanted to learn from this man. And so I ended up through life paving the way. I ended up moving from Chicago to New Orleans. And I remember being so excited about the move. And the only thing that really weighed on me was I've only been working with Kurt for, maybe half a year or so. And I want to learn as much as I can from this man, And so I told him this and I said, I want to learn from you. When are you going to teach? Do you teach? How can I? And so he had taught in the past and he had stopped for a while and he ended up deciding to do a class again. And so anyway, I took this, which was a 3-year course with him. I had moved to New Orleans. So the first year of it, I was able to take and travel to Chicago. And then the other 2 years I was living in New Orleans, so I would travel back and forth. But anyway, through this class, I found myself, which is very abnormal for me, wanting to just sit at the piano and allow music to play through me, you know, and this is from a classical person who's reading the notes and getting the notes perfect. You know, jazz always scared me half to death. And so I started doing this with this class, and it was just the way I think spirit kind of moved through me. And so then I started recording this, and it's just, you know, like all creative endeavors, they have lives of their own, right? They're like our babies. So it's kind of manifested into this making music, letting whatever needs to come through me. I feel like I'm co-creating with the universe when I record this, because I don't do a lot of different takes. I just sit, record, and then let it play. So
I love that, because I have a question. So because somebody who's so linearly trained in, and I guess more, I'm not going to say like maybe the masculine, but more of that, it is more linear notes, really following like the sequencing of music, right? So you're following that externally, and then allowing the energy of music to come through you as an expression. What was that feeling like? What, like doing like the control versus the letting go? That's the way I would assume it would be.
Right. That is very true. And from even with the training that I had, and with being in that masculine ratio and practicing the way I did, which was very masculine, when I would go out and perform, do a recital, or play with other people, performance is a whole other bag of worms. Because as a pianist, you have to memorize.
Yeah.
Any solo recital you do, you've memorized everything. So, you know, however long that recital is, an hour, half hour, it's supposed to all be in your head. Well, any musician will tell you that's all well and great, but slips happen. You forget where you are. You know, performing is very much a zone. It's very much of a feminine space, because you're in that moment and you have to flip the switch. You can't be in that mindset of getting something right. You've got to get out of your way to be a good performer. So you have to have access for both. And so when you're in that middle of that place where you're like, oh, fuck, I don't know where I am, and I somehow get out of this.
Yeah.
Your hands make something up, or you jump to a different place and you make something up. So it forces you to be in the feminine. So I had my toes wet in that, and I knew how to get into a space of allowing without realizing I knew how to do it. So it didn't feel as odd as I thought it would.
Like I would kind of, for me, I'm kind of picturing it would feel like you're on a track and then you just get off track, and then you have to get back on track if you're jumping back into that linear sequencing, and it might feel like you're falling into this void or abyss.
Yeah, no, in the moment, I didn't feel that way. I will tell you though, where I felt the turbulence was when I would finish the recording, and in sharing it with others, I'd be like, oh my God, can I really put this out there? Then all the self-doubt would come back, and all of that. Are you crazy? You didn't look at this. You didn't practice this. You didn't earn this.
Yeah.
So it was interesting.
And I don't have an ear for music, Claire, but like I was listening to the one you let us preview the other week, Nature Boy, and it can almost be in a good way like disorienting, because you don't have like the structure. Your mind is expecting you to hear this thing again. And it ends up like, if you allow it, it takes you to this like wonderful spot. And with that one, like I felt kind of this like spiral energy where there was like stuff going downward and then going upward at the same time. And I'm always fascinated with how people came into their abilities, and when did you realize that you could use that to help people heal and come back to themselves?
You know, it's fascinating. I was back in Chicago to pay my bills. I had like 3 different jobs. I was a landlord. I worked for a children's theater as a musical director. And I was a part of a duo in voice studio. My business partner and I had our own voice studio. And so these 3 things were my different prongs of how I made a living. And the thing that really opened the door to the playing and knowing I could do it was working with a very gifted director who taught these kids acting by the name of Janet Lauer. And she was very into movement, very into somatic movement, Laban, if you've ever heard of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so she would do these exercises with these kids in how their body felt. Is it lyrical? Is it percussive? These different things. And as I was sitting watching her do this, I kept thinking, you can do this with music. You can do this with music. So I approached her at one point and I said, would you mind if I did a warm up for them with doing what you do with the movements, but we put them to music, where I just play and then they do the different movements to the music? She said, no, that's brilliant. Do it. And so we sat back, and the first time we tried it with this class of ours, and just I do what I do with the recording. I sit down and start playing what was wanting to come through, and I'd watch them, and I'd watch how the music would inform their movement, and then that would inform me. And so it was like this amazing co-creation that was going on. And we'd have them close their eyes while they were doing it. And God, the beautiful stuff they would do, it was just gorgeous. So that, I think, was the intermediate point where I'm like, oh, maybe I can do this, you know? Yeah.
I love that. And I love the, it's like you're witnessing the dynamic of that musical energy, like moving the body, and then the body's informing you how to play the music. Like that would be incredible to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was amazing. And then you could, of course, I didn't have the frame of reference for this at the time, and I didn't have the vocabulary at the time either. And then you'd watch the space, because we all inform each other. Right. So as we're creating, you could just feel the expansion. So yeah, it was amazing.
I love that.
And with that, like, it's a very, I think it's cool because every healer works in their own ability, works in their own strengths. And with you, this is very authentic. And what do you like about this modality of healing versus other modalities? I mean, it's yours, it's your gift. But
well, it's interesting because I don't always use music with my clients. It depends on the client. Any good teacher, any good healer's going to walk into that room and assess, what does this person need? What do they need more of? What needs to be supported? But I will say this, because I'm not dealing in words, I'm dealing in frequency and sound, it can just go straight to the heart. And so I'm not necessarily triggering people without meaning to, because I'm not saying anything. I'm allowing the sound to do what it is. And because it's sound, because it's frequency, the listener, the client, their higher self, their energy system is going to process it in the way they most need it to. So it takes out, it's such a, what's the word? It's such a soul to soul idiom that you can't fuck up, you know?
And I love that because I'm musical. I have no musical training, but I have a good ear and I sing and I play guitar. But so music for me, it's a language of energy, and it's vibration, and how that is in resonance with a person, it can really erupt a really deep emotional response. And that is a really profound way to activate people, and not activate them or trigger them in a bad way, but I feel like it's when you have two people using language to talk, like there's just so much limitation to that when you're using direct energy, because we are energy beings. It's such a fascinating way to, like you said, get into those higher level light bodies and really break up things.
And as you're saying it, it makes me think like you're disengaging the mind. So you're not using a word that might, like you're saying, trigger. And then you might go, oh, well, let's peel back why you're having a trigger to this and why you have an emotional response to that and why that is the way that you're reacting versus you're just feeling it. And if you're having a reaction, like, okay, cool, let's talk about it. I
love that. I love that, Alex, because you're really getting out of the story. You're staying out of the story, and and I mean, I love the bottom up approach right now, like really working with like somatics and the body and allowing people to really access their feelings in a safe way without having to explain the why behind it. I mean, it's good to put those pieces into place eventually, but I love the way that you just described that. It's like you're getting the mind out of the way and you're allowing the body, which has such a fucking profound intelligence, to actually just process its shit versus trying to compute it with the mind, right?
And I would say, even piggybacking on that with music, you have a consistency of rhythm. Where you hit a spot, you hit a bump, you have time for the body to release, body to be with, do whatever, but it continues. It doesn't necessarily stop, you know? And so it's that great equalizer and consistency of pulling that energy along and not letting it stagnate, which is amazing too. Mm-hmm.
I love that description, because I'm just picturing somebody, again, you know, you're gently opening up maybe a wound that somebody is very fearful to navigate. And then the music kind of just carries the like residual effects of that and allows like this soft landing point for it to continue. I love that.
Yeah.
That's so beautifully said.
She's very gifted. I mean, like, there's no other way to put it. Like, I'm stuck using my words and re-traumatizing people, helping them.
No, you're not.
No, you're not.
So when you discovered that you were going to start using music as a means to heal, how did it actually start with you first?
Well, I'm going to answer that and then lead me if I'm not answering your question.
That's okay. I think I asked you two questions in one. So I might have thrown two at once.
I asked you two opposite questions in the same one, and let's see where this goes.
Yes.
Well, in the environment of this class, as we're experimenting and figuring out how this material of really going deep into the soul and connecting the spirit with the body, with the soul, and anchoring it in space, everyone was finding their tool shed or their wood box of how does that fit for me? How do I use this, right? For me, the easiest and most organic way was through my music, because I still was so entrenched in music every day. And I didn't realize how it was always my connection until this class. I've been doing this since I was first started with music without even knowing. So anyway, it took a form of, okay, I know I can do this. I loved this exercise I was doing with this woman. I wonder how it would play in this group. Would everybody feel the same thing? Would it evoke different emotions in different people? So I asked my class, I said, look, I'm doing this experiment with recording some music and seeing how it affects people and what arises when they listen to it. Are you guys in for listening? Are you in for sharing what you experience? And everybody was, of course, yeah, sign me up. So I did that. And it was fascinating to me because the feedback I got, the tracks, they seemed to hit very similar experiences in everybody who gave me feedback and everyone who shared. So that was fascinating to me because I wasn't necessarily anticipating that. I thought it would run the gamut. And so then that made me think of, well, if you're in a state of being, like if I'm in a state of gratitude or allowance or receptive, that's going to probably go to those places and that people who are listening to it. It may hit them
open to it.
colors. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that's kind of how my first album, Labyrinth, was conceived. Is I did that experience and I thought, why don't I release it? Why don't I release it to the public? And so I did. So yeah. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it did. And I have more questions now. So in that little experiment, did you find that the music, like you said, it was having somewhat of the same emotional effect on people who are open to receiving it?
Yes.
So what were they experiencing?
They were experiencing, well, it varied from each track.
Okay.
But some of them would experience release in terms of tears. Yeah. The overall kind of through point through it was great relaxation and calming. Mm-hmm. They felt like they went to a different place, and that their muscles were relaxing, their body was relaxing, and wherever they were prior to listening, after listening, they were in a different place.
Oh, that's beautiful. So next question. When you were creating that music, was your intention there through that?
Yes. And that is huge.
Yeah.
I think with any healer, right? Yeah. We learn how important that is. Now, I am a great person who doesn't like to limit myself, however. So while I go in with intentions, they're usually pretty open-ended.
Right.
So I sit down and I say, may what needs to come through me in this moment for myself, as well as anyone who will listen to this piece now or forever, come through unfettered and with direct connection to source, something like that.
And that's beautiful. Yeah, because then you're, again, back to that co-creating with spirit. You become the conduit, but also the active participant in the intentionality of it.
Exactly. And I didn't want to limit myself to one feeling or one state, because I found out pretty early on that, because I don't shy away from the ugly, Yeah. And so I'd sit down, I'd be really pissed, and I'd be, oh, what a great time to play this. And so I'd sit down and I'd play it. And then I was always fascinated by, 2 or 3 minutes into it, I wasn't pissed anymore. And I had gone through like 2 or 3 different states as it was playing through me. So yeah, it's fascinating how it just has its own way with you. Myself as the creator, and I think the listener too.
Can you both unpack intention more? Because I understand what you're saying, but for some people, they might not be actively aware of the power of their intention, whether it's on their daily experience or just holding space and showing up for other people.
You want to go first, Nat?
Okay. So I think even when I go into, I'll give an example. When I go into session with a client, I am clearing my body, first of all, and emptying so that I'm not bringing, it's funny, we were just talking about this before we hit record, that we bring so much energetic baggage into an experience. If we're not aware of it, it sits there, and it can, because energy is dynamic, it can permeate things. So back to the intentionality is when I'm in session with somebody, I will always empty first. And then it's like I do a little prayer where I'm opening myself up to be the conduit to source and allowing what needs to come through with the highest good of myself and the other person. So that's kind of, for me, really important, because if you're not clear, you can bring a lot of murky shit into that session. Sorry, that's my take. You go ahead, Claire.
No, I think that's perfect. I like
that. That's a perfect
Just
word.
got better. More perfecter.
But no, that's exactly it. And I think of it as bookends.
Yeah.
You know, like you're just clarifying a period in your life, you know, so you're releasing what came before, and you're just honoring what's about to unfold in a really easy way of putting it, you know. And you can be as general as you need. Please present to me what I most need to experience in this moment, or if you're interacting with someone, it just, you know, whatever's feeling like the perfect beginning of a chapter for you. Saying it out loud, there's something, or even saying it within, there's something that just really clicks it into gear when you acknowledge that.
Okay, I've got a crazy random question. So, like, when you start to get more familiar with another language, sometimes you might think in that language, or you might dream in that language if you get there to that point. Is part of your inner dialogue music?
That's such a good question, Alex. Sorry.
It's such a weird ADD brain thing, but
I love that.
No, it's perfect. And any of the kids that I've worked with, or any of the people that I've worked with as a conductor or person helping them with music, will laugh out loud if they hear this, because when I am in that mode of creating or rehearsing or performing, I always laughingly say English is my second language, because music is the language that I really, really live in. Yeah. So yeah. And when I'm in that spot, sometimes I can't form words, or I make up words, like whatever it was.
Perfecter or whatever. I think that language is so limiting to like what energy is. It's just, there's no way you can put words to something so expressive and abstract, to something so abstract, intangible, right?
Well, it takes a photo of it.
Yeah.
You know, so it isn't alive and sparkling and expanding. You know, you've defined it in that moment. Yeah.
Made it permanent.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then with the word, I mean, as one of my teachers would say, we say bottle, we're all thinking of a different bottle. And now we throw 200 more words around that word bottle, and we're all going to have our own interpretations of what's going on within that.
And then we wonder why it gets muddy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So Claire, in session with you, I'm so curious. What walk us through what a session would be like with Claire Bigley, because I might book one now. I'm just like, I'm really excited to hear about this.
Well, typically the first session is the client and myself kind of feeling each other out, you know. Like you, Natalie, I always make sure that I empty before I meet someone. So I don't want to have any preconceived ideas or notions or anything. So I'm really meeting that person. I'm getting a sense of who they are, what they want to work on, what they want to create in their life, what they want help with, all of that stuff. And it usually starts with talking, you know, sitting across from each other. And for me, listening, hopefully more than talking, right? Peppering that one question that's going to let me see into what they're bringing to the table intentionally, and what maybe is living under the surface that maybe wants to come out but hasn't felt comfortable yet to do so.
Right.
I'm also assessing, you know, what's their tone of voice? Are they speaking a mile a minute? Are they in their mind? Are they slow? Do they have trouble moving? You know, where am I going to open them up? Am I going to do it through movement? Am I going to do it through sound? I mean, you know, where are we going to build the pathways, essentially? You know, and I usually have a fairly good idea, at least enough to take us in a certain direction. And then, you know, once you've made a direction, they'll let you know real quick if it's not working or if it is, you know, and so then you're constantly assessing and checking in. I've had people lay underneath my piano, and I've played while they've been underneath the piano, which, you know, I've had people who have told me that that was an amazing experience for them, because that soundboard's right. I have a baby grand piano. And so that soundboard's right on top of them. And again, it's similar to that acting class in that I'm sitting down, I'm asking their team, my team, what most needs to be played. And then it's affected by what I'm feeling through them. And, you know, tuning forks are a great way to start and to go in. Again, just a pure, powerful, and gentle at the same time. Powerful, but yet gentle. The way the tuning fork goes in, it's working directly with the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes as little, you know, the client's nervous system is acclimating and leading that work. So it really just depends, you know.
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny because I do all of my sessions. I'm starting a couple here in the city locally, but I've done most of my work online, and it's the same thing. I don't do video. I just do over the phone, and all of the information comes through the voice. It's all through the vibration, and then through that vibration, I'm getting visuals, and I can see the energy bodies. And I mean, that's just my gift, and how I'm working with that energy coming through their voice. And then it's like the more that I allow them to speak, there's such a tapestry of information for me to pick up on. And again, it's that dynamic. So I love that. Sometimes we forget, like, even our own gifts and what we're doing, just listening to. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing that too.
Yeah, and we forget, I think, all of us, how powerful truly listening is.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And again, not listening to the words, but to the tonality, and like, are they in their body, or are they in their head? Like, where is their voice? You can feel insecurity, you can feel dominance, you can feel there's so much in a person's voice and in the sound, like so much richness. It's fascinating.
I never realized it till you both are talking about it, but like especially being in sales, you know, you hear that
Yeah, you're working with it already.
You're working with it, and like you hear the words that like they energetically match up with the word that they're saying. Like, cool, they believe that. And then the words that they're not sure about, there's kind of like this dissonance there. And then you're like, oh, that's a word to maybe focus on, to listen to more.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by the world of energy because most people just think it's this like woo woo. I'm like, no, y'all are working with it. Trust me, every single day you're working with energy, and you are so much more perceptive. Some a little bit more than others, but it's such a left out in the woo woo closet over here and pseudoscience. But like, my gosh, there's so much information through it.
Well, and it's an interesting mixture of people taking it for granted, because as you say, they're just using it without even being realizing it. And that element of that insidious disingenuizing it.
Yes.
By certain places and people, and
What do you mean by that, Claire?
Well, how many of us have had that part of ourselves, that intuition, that reading things that was either very obviously or subtly poo-pooed, or are you sure about that? So that you don't trust it, you start distrusting it, and some people have had that done to them overtly, and some people just very subtly throughout their lives. So
I think it's a big conditioning to not trust your intuition or energy at all. Well, intuition is energy. It's the abstract form of expression. But yeah, I feel like I could listen to you like all day talk about like sessions. So I want to dive into
real quick. If you're looking for a different business venue, I think you should do the opposite of like a sound deprivation chamber. Like it would just be under your piano, and then you have like a little tent and like a galaxy projector in there, and be like, hey, for $50 more, I'll give you some mushrooms. You go down there and you have a ball, and I'm gonna play the piano for 3 hours.
Totally.
Plant medicine journey under
reality glasses, right?
Oh yeah.
A plant medicine journey under Claire Bigley's piano. I'm down for that. And it's interesting because this is reminding me of, I remember being in a therapy session with somebody we all know, Mr. Kurt.
He's got two more.
I know. And him describing this way of, when I was married, communicating without our words, like using guttural sounds with the body. Holy shit, that is powerful. I've used that with clients that I've worked in the dynamic of the relationship. It is so powerful because sound coming from your body and expressed with emotion, it lands on the other person. So
peel that back a little bit for the people that don't know what we're talking about.
Okay. So basically I had a session where I was supposed to communicate with my partner, not using language, but using, like, I'm trying to tell him, I guess, my frustrations and what is happening in my reality, in my my perception of the relationship. And I wasn't allowed to use language, but I had to use guttural sounds. I had to be like, like whatever came out. But I'm telling you right now, my partner at the time was like, I know what you said. I deeply know what you said without using language, because you are using energy. You are using sound vibration as an expression, as an output. That shit lands far better than words. Words fuck everything up, I think.
Absolutely.
So that was my experience, and I think it's profound when you can do that. Have you experienced that, Claire?
I have experienced that. In fact, that very same gentleman had us as a class do that exercise. Yeah. And it was amazing. And I've since stumbled upon another woman by the name of Vicki Dodd, who's a sound healer. And she does a lot of work with toning and vocalizing, but your body. So like say you wake up in the morning and you've got some ache or pain, like I right now have a little ache or pain right on the left side of my back. So allow that body part to speak through your sound.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. I'm going to try
It
that
is
tomorrow.
so amazing. Yeah. Because number one, talk about sound and vibration. Your body, your spirit loves the sound of your own voice.
I know my mind does. Or my
I'm just always waiting for Alex to just get in there with that joke.
Yeah, here we go. Case in point.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, using your own voice to dialogue with your body without words is revolutionary. Yeah.
That's, I mean, I do a lot of like somatic work where we're guiding women back into their body, and just like through subtle acknowledgement of feeling like sensations, but adding that next layer of, instead of using the mind to go into the body, but allowing the body to come out through the vocal expression. That's, I'm gonna give that a whirl.
Well, I mean, even now we're talking, right? We're intellectualizing the bottom up approach. And Natalie was saying, like, I've been obsessed with it. Like, I'm doing bioenergetic work over here too, of just allowing myself to feel it.
Yeah.
But then we start talking about it because we have to put it in some category.
Yeah.
We have to make sense of it, and we have to be able to quote it and be intelligible in front of people.
Well, contextualize it too. Like, you got to put it into some linear sequencing so it makes sense in this very linear reality.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to ask you, like, some of the ways that you are really inspired right now is through love, creativity. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Wow. My basic practice is I'm so lucky, right? I have music. I have such an organic way for me to create in any moment, in any time. So how can I bring that to every moment of my day? Can I be an allowance when I'm making my mom's breakfast? Can I be an allowance and flow and savoring the heck out of a moment of an argument? When every being, every cell in my body's wanting to push that away and resist it. Yeah. Can I open up to that experience? Can I love that? Can I love the good, bad, and the ugly, whatever's presenting, and how quickly can I either stay in that space or access it? So that's the hard stuff, right? That's the daily practice. And how can I be okay with the fact that I've only felt like I did it 40% today versus 80% yesterday? What can I allow and accept within? And that's been such a fascinating practice, and fascinating to watch the depth of that open out and in the past couple of years, just within myself, acknowledging and knowing what a vast universe we are inside is a huge feat in and of itself, so yeah.
I love that. The acceptance piece is, I feel like that's like my biggest, I'm not going to say battle, because it's like, how do I accept the battle? But the surrendering and allowing to what is, but adding that next layer of loving all of it, like bringing love into that cringy part where we don't want to go to. I mean, that's adding another layer of expansion into it.
And there's a word that I'm completely in love with right now, befriending.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I use befriending a lot with our nervous system, because I work a lot with the nervous system with clients, but not in a way where I'm forcing you to regulate it. I don't, it's good to be regulated, but can you befriend the pattern of your nervous system and really get to know it and just allow it to move? And just through the acceptance of it, it starts to shift and change as its own innate intelligence instead of forcing it to change it. So I love the word befriending too. Mm-hmm. And then I have a question about, and I think this is a personal question that I have for myself, but I think our audience will really get a lot out of. How do you really get into your creativity? How do you initiate that? I guess you can't force it and initiate it, but give us some tips here, because for me, that's like one of my biggest things that I would love to learn more about.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I'm still kind of tapping into it. But
well, I'm going to give you a twofold answer.
Okay.
For me, it's one of my superpowers. So it's really easy for me to do.
Yeah.
So all I have to do is turn a switch, because I've had years of knowing the difference between practicing and performing. So I just access that, turn the switch, play through me, and I'm ready. Okay. For my clients and for people who maybe they don't have that kind of access to it, for me, there are a few different ways that I found really helpful and easy to do. People get really sick of hearing this because everybody says this, but it is golden, is sitting down, both feet on the floor, and really taking conscious breath. Feeling that inhale going to all the cells of your body, and just taking, at least 5 really good deep breaths in and out. I like to have my clients do a visualization of having the roots grow through their legs, allowing branches to grow up into the ethers. So you're accessing spirit as well as earth. There's also another great way of doing it, like I talked earlier about getting the body really involved, sitting with yourself, just sitting. Is there any body part or anything that wants to speak to me right now? Okay, and spoiler alert, this is going to be really weird, guys, but again,
I do that all the time, don't worry. It's like my every day.
I've got a little thing in my shoulder right now, so okay, I'm going to let that shoulder speak, and it sounds kind of like and it doesn't have to be pretty. It's, can you let your voice just speak? And just the doing that, you're in your body. You're grounded. I mean, I'm there,
And sometimes you got to get weird. Like, you got to get dirty, and you put it in the intro where we were saying, like, what are you passionate about? You're like embodying the dirt in the day-to-day. And it's like, this is a big part of the spiritual practices, your ability to get comfortable with being uncomfortable with yourself, your noises, your patterns, your shadows, grandiosity.
I don't think there's anything off limits on this podcast. That's not weird. I remember I went on a date a couple months ago, and I started to describe a little bit about what I do.
You made one of those noises for this guy?
So
let's both check in and make a noise of how we feel being on this date. Okay, you go.
I was telling him like a little bit about what I do. And he's like, that's weird. I'm like, you don't even know that half of where I go. Like, I'm just like the weirdest cookie out there. Like, the movement, like I'm so much more in my body. Like I've never been so like so connected to my instincts, like what is actually going on in my body and the feeling versus like mentally connecting everything. Yeah. I just get weirder as I get older. It's great.
Well, and it's interesting. If you work in the world of soul,
Yeah.
and if you believe that divinity is in all of us and moves through all of us and is in everything, wouldn't you delight in everything that is, in everything that presents? I mean, look at our play box, our sandbox. It's amazing.
Yeah. So the next thing that I want to
she only got the one part of the two part, she said.
Oh.
Just not to be a stickler, just.
Well, no, because Alex, the one part for me was how I do it, which is I just turn the switch and I'm there. The second part was how I sometimes different ways I can help my clients get there.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. That's all right.
And do you feel that like accessing your creativity, does it change for you or?
It can in a given day. Not so much in that the way I usually do it doesn't work, but there'll be different ways that spirit will go, hey, let's go this way.
Like,
or let's go that way. Yeah. So depending on how I'm feeling or what I'm feeling drawn to in the day, it can vary. Mm-hmm.
All right, I've got a fun, dumb, weird question.
Let's hear it, Alex. I love these questions.
From all your life experience, your inner and outer experiences of being on this planet, what question do you wish people would ask you? Because there's all shit that we know, but you can't, nobody T-balls it up for you.
Oh, and I should have known you were going to ask this.
Like, damn, I wish I would have prepared.
And it's hysterical that you do, because when you asked it in an email and you shared what your question was, which was delightful, by the way. And I thought on it, and I think I told you in the moment, let me think on that. I thought on it for a while, and I, for the life of me, have not come up with an answer to that question.
Okay.
So I will punt right now and say what comes through me in this very moment. And it's, ask me about drum and bugle corps.
What about drum and bugle corps?
Yeah, what about drum and bugle corps?
Well, are either of you guys familiar with it?
No.
Okay. Well, it is, if you're a marching band person, and I also played the French horn. So I was in marching band all through school and growing up and everything. Drum and bugle corps is an event that employs about 128 people, kids. You age out after age 21. So it's, usually kids from early teens to age 21. And it's essentially like the Olympics of marching bands. They're amazing groups.
Wow.
When I was marching back in the day, I marched for 4 years through high school and college. It was only bugles. It was bugles, just brass, and then drums. Now they have 3-valved instruments. So you've got trumpets and that, so it's evolved. But it was an amazing situation. And it was the closest I've ever come to group perfection in my life.
Whoa.
Wow.
And talk about vibration, just this wall of sound that you're walking in and walking through. And, the season, they have winter camps that they do where and it's audition. The big, really good corps it's very hard to get into these groups. And they have weekend camps where they're learning drill and learning to play together. And then the whole summer season is their season. And, every day you're traveling around the country to these different shows, and then you're practicing on the field with these people. And, you're learning how to get along with people because you were living with them on the bus and in rehearsal and everything. And it was one of the most profound group experiences I've ever experienced. Yeah.
Wow. Very cool.
Yeah, it's not something many people know about me that I did it or anything.
Well, now people listening to this podcast are going to know.
Oh,
Did you ever get into a music fight with somebody where your teacher's just like, you guys got to duke it out?
a music fight? I don't think so. Although I did give trumpet players a lot of guff because I have this theory where musicians, their personalities tend to come through on what instrument they pick to play.
Okay,
And
I like this.
Trumpeters,
Like it's an extension of their personality.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said for trumpeters in that they tend to
We're going to piss off all of our listeners who are trumpet players.
have a little bit of arrogance, depending on the personality itself. It can vary, and women are a little different than men trumpeters. But anyway, they tend to like to showcase and show off. And being a French horn mellow player, it used to gall me that, there'd always be this trumpeter who'd have to hold onto the big high note after everyone else is cut off. They've got to and then cut off after the whole set. So that would be yeah.
So how did you burst the energetic ego?
Well, there may have been a shirt that the mellophone section created and wore in Miami University back in the day that had the top 10 reasons we're glad we're mellophones rather than trumpeters.
Straight up, it's on my shirt.
You may have done that. So we called him out on a shirt. Yeah.
And then he's reading it as he's playing.
Yeah. Just his ego's just like melting. The note fades.
Yeah, it was fun. And it was back in the day. I think it was back in the late 80s, 90s. I'm dating myself. So we got it in neon green.
As you would.
Yeah, that's bold. That's bold, Claire.
There you go. Yeah.
Claire, is there anything that kind of irks you about the spiritual community?
Yes. And you guys call it out beautifully on your podcast. The thing that irks me the most about it is when the community and practitioners go into this work with a feeling of fixing rather than allowing and giving space and honor to all parts of ourselves and all parts of our clients.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, in your journey of being Claire Bigley on this planet, and what was a really defining moment for you that kind of catapulted some growth and expansion?
Well, there was a moment back when I was in Chicago where, and I think I told you I had a 3-prong thing going. One of them was being a landlord. And one of my businesses was faltering. It was like around 2010 when that, crazy house thing hit and everyone was scrambling. And people didn't need voice lessons. It was a luxury item. So our business kind of dried up overnight. I was behind in some payments with the house because my income had dramatically shifted. Mm-hmm. And I went through a while just not asking for help because this felt like my thing I needed to fix. I didn't want to ask for help with my parents or what have you. And to make a long story short, it got to a point where I had to fess up and tell my parents about this, and I had to ask for the help because I couldn't get out of it myself. And if I didn't have their help, I was going to be foreclosed on. So, it was very humbling. I was just horrified that I got myself in this situation, all the things. And so I remember having the conversation with them. I remember problem solving with them. I remember making the adjustments that I needed to. And I remember just this quiet part of myself that was there through the whole time. It was just like, I know this is not what you wanted. You've avoided this. The worst has happened and you're not dead. You're okay. I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. And it was just this very calm, strong, and very grounding voice in my head, and I know now that was, that spirit in me, that soul in me. And it really opened me up. It humbled me. It opened me up. And it was an amazing course correction, course correction in my life. So, yeah, I would say that was that.
I love that. And it always feels like, we have so much fear of what could happen. And then you go to the worst case scenario and you're like, oh, I'm actually okay.
Yeah.
It's more of a societal thing that, I see you on that. That's most of the time we resist. We don't want to go to that fear or that place. And we live in that resistance. And then spirit's like, just go there. You're okay. You're going to be okay.
Yeah. And then to have that experience and to understand how much energy that took to keep up that facade.
Yeah.
I mean, my God. And then to have it crumble and go, oh, wow, I was exhausting myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Spirit works in very interesting ways. And I wouldn't say this is a defining moment for me, but a moment where I was I was in corporate, I was working for L'Oreal, and I was teaching spin classes. I was a training firm. I was doing everything masculine, push, push, push. And I broke my ankle. Spirit's like, you're not going to do all that shit. We're going to break your ankle. And I was forced to sit.
Got in bed with the spiritual mafia.
Yeah. They're like, basically broke my ankle, made me sit in my apartment alone for 6 weeks. I couldn't work, couldn't drive, couldn't do anything. The discomfort that I had to sit with, it was like spirit's like, no, we're going to force you to sit. You got to sit down. Stop moving. Spirit will. Well, spirit will fuck you up.
Absolutely, and right.
Your ego,
And talk about, and there's so many different feelings and opinions about COVID, but talk about a universal reboot and forcing people to sit for a while and stop their patterns. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, that was and I still feel like people are still recovering from that stillness, trying to kind of put the pieces of their life back together, even including myself after coming out. I'm like, what does life look like now after that? Right.
Yeah.
Redefining, like, how do I want to navigate my new social life after COVID, after I was craving it, but then I'm like, that's too much. But it's very I'm fascinated by it.
Me too. Yeah, it gave us an opportunity to choose what we wanted to put back in. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, and for some people, I think it added to their disconnection. They didn't have people to be with, or they relied on technology too much, and then they conditioned a bad pattern. Outside validation.
Yeah, some people. Some people worked with it and took that pause. Some people didn't and became a little bit more crazy, maybe.
I wish I could say I learned a language during it or something, like, oh yeah, I'm multilingual now. Or
well, let me tell you, you were being a dad during COVID.
I get that.
Tell you that I was a mom during COVID. That was intense. That was a lot.
Yeah,
So,
I can't even imagine. Yeah.
yeah. So you got to pat yourself on the back there, Mr. Hindley.
He's still alive.
Yeah. Your son.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Well, and getting down, that video of him dancing the other night was just adorable.
Oh, so cute.
Claire, like you would have like the energy, like so my brother, they've been living together, but my brother married a Hmong woman. And so my family, we have no culture or traditions or anything like that. You know, we have our own weird traditions that we make ourselves. I've got more, but I just didn't, you know, different angles. My mom was trying to film my brother and dance. My brother and my dad were dancing. My dad was dancing with my new sister-in-law, and then my brother was dancing with his mother-in-law. And my brother and dad, you know, never shared a dance floor together. So we're filming it, and then my mom looks over and she's like, just sees her grandson, and he's just doing this crazy shit. And she's like, her camera keeps going off and looking at him. It's hilarious. Claire, homework time for us.
Yeah, and for our listeners, we always like to give our listeners a little tidbit of, I already know what the homework is, I think.
It's her homework to give us.
I know.
Well, I
Give me and our audience.
I might have blown the homework timing, though. I might have shared it already.
I think I
had
know
a feeling
what it is.
as well.
I think I know what it is, but we'll let you explain.
So my homework is to, you know, whenever you're going to do this, sit in a comfortable place, check in with your body, take a couple of deep breaths, and really check in with your body. How's your body feeling? You know, kind of scan all parts of your body. And if there is a spot that calls out for your attention, tune into that spot and allow your voice to speak for it.
I love it.
Now, there's no wrong about this. You can vocalize, sing something. You can sing a melody. You can use guttural sounds, just sounds. You can pick a a syllable, whatever, just whatever feels true to this part of the body. If there isn't a spot that's calling out for you or that wants to speak through you, pick a syllable and hum. Maybe it's om, om. Natural volume doesn't matter. Just allow it to be connected to the breath. Whatever syllable feels natural and organic to you. So those are two options right there. But getting in connection with your voice in some way.
I love it.
I love that. I'm like ready to shut my laptop off and go do that right now. Well, Claire, thank you so much. This has been such a beautiful exploration of like sound and music and your unique gifts. And I'm just so excited to put this episode out.
Me too.
Well, thank you guys. I had such a ball. It was really fun talking to you. And you guys are the questions you ask are just inspired, and it's so easy to talk with you. So thank you. I'm so honored.
Oh, thanks for just being in our space and playing with us.
Yeah. And so Claire, where can our listeners find you? What are you offering? Just let them know.
Well, you can just type in Claire Bigley into any musical streaming platforms, and you should be able to come up with my artist profile. Mm-hmm. I've got a new single being released on the winter solstice. It's a piece of music that was inspired by my mom. So it's kind of got mother-daughter vibes to it, you know. And then I've got the one that I sent to Alex for pre-listening. It's a cover of one of my favorite songs called Nature Boy that's being released on the spring equinox. So that's something to look forward to. My website is www.soulsongquests.com. You can easily jump off onto different things through that website. And I think I sent you guys a bunch of links.
We'll post all the links in the show notes so that everybody can find out where you're at. And do you do in-person sessions, or do you do online?
I do in-person as well as online. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, we'll make sure our audience knows that too.
And the very least, give her a listen. Just sit and.
Yeah.
It's again, I wish I was had a better ear to appreciate what you're doing, but I'm still going places when I'm hearing it. Like I listened to Grounding today, and it was what I needed in the moment, dealing with a sick 4-year-old.
Yeah.
So thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for being a guest on our podcast today, Claire. It's been awesome. So fun to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Huffing Spirit Podcast. Remember, you are your own teacher. Take what resonates and leave the rest. For more info, follow us on Instagram at Huffing Spirit Podcast and subscribe on Spotify or iTunes. Bye for now.